think people were, worried, nervous, felt ashamed, and I maybe didn't think that it was going to turn into be something any bigger than normal. I was speaking to a minister here this morning who was like, I get sort of approaches like this fairly regularly, maybe not quite so personalised and somebody who has my sort of direct phone number, but they are on the lookout for this stuff all the time. I don't think they quite realised that this was significantly different from a lot of the other approaches they get.
Front page of the Times this morning. A senior Conservative MP has admitted his involvement in a honeytrap sexting scandal targeting a minister and fellow MPs. This MP in question is William Wragg, chairman of a Commons Select Committee, telling the Times he handed over the personal phone numbers of colleagues to a man he met on Grindr, the gay dating app. It's characteristically brilliant reporting from the Times chief political correspondent Aubrey Allegretti. Morning, Aubrey.
Morning, Colin.
Good to see you. First of all, in William Wragg, this follows sort of days of reporting. In terms of his confession, and indeed his apology, he says he's mortified, he's let people down, he has hurt people by being weak, is the quote that he gave you. Is this the conclusion to this story, do you think?
No, almost certainly not. I mean, what we have is one piece of the jigsaw puzzle, which is effectively understanding how somebody was able to get senior MPs, including ministers' phone numbers, in order to try and solicit these explicit pictures from them. What we don't really know yet is who that third party was and why they were doing it. And obviously, I think the worrying thing for some Conservative MPs who were targeted is that two MPs separate from William Wragg sent pictures back. And so somewhere out there exists that material that they're concerned they don't know what might happen to it.
In terms of what happens for those MPs, it's something we were speaking to Gareth Davis, Treasury Minister, about earlier, and he was saying anybody who feels they're being blackmailed should go straight to the police, which clearly is sensible advice. But I do wonder if there's a role for the Conservative Party in this, if those MPs feel they can speak to the Conservative Party and say, it's me, and I'm now worried about this.
I think there's a lot of sort of shame attached to this. Like when you're trying to speak to people about the motivations for why they were involved in this, or indeed speak to victims about why they didn't go to the whips as well. As far as I know, this wasn't escalated to the whips office, even though conversations have been happening about this for about a month now. I think people were, worried, nervous, felt ashamed, and I maybe didn't think that it was going to turn into be something any bigger than normal. I was speaking to a minister here this morning who was like, I get sort of approaches like this fairly regularly, maybe not quite so personalised and somebody who has my sort of direct phone number, but they are on the lookout for this stuff all the time. I don't think they quite realised that this was significantly different from a lot of the other approaches they get.
Yeah, and on a slightly different but related note, Sir Robert Goodwill was on this programme, about an hour ago, saying that on a trip to Belarus, he was once called in the middle of the night with somebody offering to send him a prostitute, and he, in his words, told them where to get off. I think he made it quite clear that he was not interested. But it's interesting to hear that.
And he thought it was a honey trap. That was what he said. He said at the time he thought it was a trap.
It was somebody trying to catch him out. So then you have to wonder whether the systems are adequate for reporting these sorts of things, and also within that, whether MPs are educated to a high enough standard, high enough level on how to deal with these situations when they're presented to them.
Yeah, I think there are questions about William Wragg's judgment here, because as Ellie was talking about on the radio earlier, Ellie Reeves, MPs are given a lot of training and support and guidance about how to deal with this kind of stuff. Even we are, as journalists working in Parliament, we are all kind of understand the risks and potential threats, how people might try to use or manipulate us as well. And, you can have all of those protections and systems and guidance, but ultimately if there's a lapse in judgment or, a poor decision made, as was made repeatedly in this case, it seems, then there's nothing that anybody can do really to guard against that.
Yeah. What sort of reaction have you had from other MPs who I imagine have been contacting you and you've been speaking to in terms of what should happen next, particularly to William Wragg?
So I think, first of all, a lot of MPs don't understand why colleagues would have replied. So there's a lot of kind of, are you stupid? We get these approaches all the time. Why would you do this sort of thing? And in the cold light of day, it becomes a lot sort of harsher. In terms of, I suppose, the questions about William Wragg's future, well, he's going to stand down at the next election. I don't get the sense that he's immediately thinking about quitting as an MP. Looks as though the sort of government whips are going to support him. He's not having the whip withdrawn. So he will remain sitting as a Conservative MP. So I suspect that he will sort of ride this out. It's recess as well, meaning that obviously MPs aren't in Westminster, so he can sort of take stock away from London. And, you know, the Leicestershire police investigation is into malicious communications, which would suggest that it's focusing primarily on the person who was doing the messaging, sending and soliciting the pictures. So I think really it's going to be a sort of political judgment for William Wragg's constituents at the election. And then, of course, there's the prospect of a Parliamentary Standards Commissioner inquiry once the police investigation's open, because they always look into allegations of bringing Parliament into disrepute, which it's hard to argue this doesn't.
Yeah, fair. Aubrey, thank you very much. It's really good to see you. Brilliant reporting on the front page of the Times for you this morning, or online. It's still top of the website and the app. As you refresh your edition this morning, you can read Aubrey Allegretti, Chief Political Correspondent for the Times. Thank you. Let's turn to Times Radio's Adam Bolton. Morning, Adam.
Good morning.
Right, what do you make of it all? Shall we start with the front page story from the Times on William Wragg and indeed Gareth Davis's response to it?
Well, Gareth Davis there playing extremely safe and not really, as one would expect, making any suggestions as to what should happen to Mr. Wragg. I mean, let's put this in context. There have been stories all this week, started out by the political website, of so-called spearfishing or catfishing, which is people contacting MPs and workers in Parliament, flirtatious messages, effectively seeking them to respond. And we understand that at least 2 MPs did send back explicit pictures having received them. As far as we know from the story, this relates not just to Conservative MPs but to Labour MPs as well. We don't know about other parties. Now, the rumour mill obviously was working very fast, and now what appears to have happened is that William Wragg, who actually had set himself up really as a sort of guardian of the right behaviour in Parliament. He called for the resignation of Boris Johnson and for Liz Truss. He didn't take ministerial office. He went on to the Backbench 1922 committee. He decided to come clean to the Times' Aubrey Allegretti, apparently in a great deal of distress, saying, yes, he had been contacted. He had been involved in some sort of exchange with the people contacting him, and that had included him giving out the contact numbers of some other MPs. So I think where this goes from here is clearly there's a parliamentary investigation. There is an investigation by the Leicester Police, apparently involving one of the other unnamed MPs who has made a complaint to them about these contacts. And, you know, we shall see. Will the Conservatives decide that the appropriate thing is to suspend Mr. Wragg from the party? Should be said he'd already announced his intention of standing down in a constituency, Hazel Grove in Greater Manchester, which is high on the Lib Dem target list. They had it before William Wragg won it in 2015. Will there be complaints to the Standards Committee about William Wragg giving out the private phone numbers of colleagues? And of course, will others who've been caught up in this come forward and actually say what their involvement has been? We do know that some, again, unnamed MPs have said, well, look, they received these messages and they did what most normal people would do, think they're suspicious and block them.
Yeah, indeed.